Hey, what's up guys, my name is Ramen or Dolphin, and in this video I'm going to be teaching you guys how to use your terraining and your structures to complement each other and make your build look better in general. So I'm not going to ramble on for too long because this is a longer video in general. So I hope you guys enjoy the video and be sure to smash like and subscribe. So yeah, enjoy. So with the themed garden, you guys have seen me build countless gardens in the past, so I didn't want to just build your everyday average bagel dolphin garden. I actually wanted to show you guys something that uses structures, hence the title of the video, Structure Tutorial. So structures, when you're building a garden with a structure or something that is supporting it, what you want to do is really actually incorporate a terrain into your build, because using a terrain, you're not supposed to deter your build or just have a terrain for the sake of having it, but the terrain is really used to complement your build. And for my situation, I was actually going to be building a Japanese village kind of thing on top of this hillside, and it was going to feature a couple of cherry blossom, or as Google says it, the Some Yoshino trees, and basically having a Chinese mountain or Japanese mountain terrain for this would be absolutely perfect. So using the gradient of cyan terracotta, cobblestone, stone, and light gray terracotta, using these blocks together, I was able to make the perfect gradient for this build. Understanding these gradients is really critical to building the right things, because without these gradients, you won't be able to choose the right terrain, and your terrains are going to look very out of place with the build that you're building. So understanding these different landforms and these different terrains will help your build a lot. Now, as every good build battle builder knows, you must spam leaves, because leaves are pretty much just the fastest way to detail everything. And I want to give credit to Digital Africa, my thumbnail artist, as well as Angel Spell for showing me this tactic, because they pretty much spam some jungle slabs around, and these slabs actually help a lot because they kind of look like the roots of these trees. And now moving on, I added a layer of dirt and a layer of grass on top of this terrain to finish it all off, because of course in Japan these villagers are probably going to be living on, grassier areas rather than just a rocky surface. With this done, I now use Pro Tools to fill bucket the rest of the terrain in with more grass. If you want a Pro Tools tutorial, I will be making one in the near future. However, not in this video, because this video is assuming that you do understand the logic of using Pro Tools, as I am going to be showing you how to do this terrain in a bagel way. And, well, if you haven't watched my tutorial video on how to build terraining the way I'm doing it right now in the past, do go ahead and check out my episode 4 before you watch this, because that is a prelude to how you terrain with Pro Tools. But as you can see, I am just simply pasting the terrain across the rest of the map, and with this completely done, I was now going to move on to the structure. So as you know, these places or these temples or villages or whatever mainly contain these red pillars with green roofs and a stone foundation on the bottom. So that's exactly what I was going to do. I used prismarine and dark prismarine to create the roofs, as well as stone and cobblestone on the bottom to create the foundations. And as you know, when you're copy pasting a building, you want it to be 5 blocks wide and however many blocks tall you want. I use exactly just 3 blocks tall for a short foundation, and then layered on top of this the rest of the build. So I used red terracotta to build the pillars to this temple, and then on top of these red terracotta things, I just used prismarine and layered on my own custom roof, which is made out of dark prismarine and prismarine to have this Japanese effect. I played around with the roof a little bit and just extended the size a little bit, and eventually I did find the perfect fit for this roof at a small scale, because of course building strange shapes like this at a small scale is relatively difficult. So after finishing off this roof, I pretty much just moved on to building the rest of this building, which is completely using copy paste. So with this complete, I selected my position A, which is going to be one corner of the build, and position B, which is going to be another corner of the build. And I copied everything within the area, and what you want to do for this structure is actually copy it and then paste it 1 block in front on the corner in front. Of course, I messed up my copy paste because my copy didn't register or something. I don't really remember, but it didn't actually work, so I just recopied it and fixed up the entire build a little bit more. But you paste it 1 block forward, you go for the next part and you continue to paste it 1 block forward, and you just continue laying the same piece one block forward until you reach the middle, which would be 3 copies, and then you will move 3 blocks to your right. And the reason you move 3 blocks is so that the entire thing is still symmetrical. I measured it, you can trust me. Anyway, as you can see, I did mess up a little bit because my copying area was a little bit strained for this. However, once I pasted in, it would start to work fine. And well, I finished the rest of the pasting. It was a little bit messed up, but that's okay because I just fixed it by hand. And with the entire temple completed, well, the front side of the temple completed, I was now going to move on to the back side of the temple. And of course, I didn't even start my garden yet, so I was a little bit tight on time. But my garden was going to be simple since there was not much space for it in the first place, and it was just going to be a little bit of pink tree and pink bush of cherry blossoms being featured in the front of this thing. So after selecting the entire temple, I moved down and decided exactly where I was going to paste it from. Originally I thought I was going to paste it from the top, but that's actually not true, because I'm supposed to paste it from the bottom since it was copied from the bottom. So I moved 1 block inwards and pasted the entire thing again, and I realized I was supposed to paste on the other side, so I pasted it on the other side and the entire thing was now pasted in. So I cleared out the leaf blocks that came with the paste, and then after that I set up an entire cobblestone floor to the entire build, because having a cobblestone floor means that the build is better rounded and there's no longer a floating bit on the top. With the floor done, I had only 2 minutes left, so I quickly added a couple of stairs into the build because you needed a way to get back up into the temple. And with this done, I quickly set up a massive wall in the back because I didn't really have time to build a proper Japanese roof, so I just set up a big wall in the back, and since this is just a basic structure idea, this was pretty much ideal for my situation in the first place. Now the wall was a little bit tall, so I just cleared off the entire top of this wall so that it was just leveled with the rest of the temple. Now moving down, I got my pink blocks out and was about to spam in all of the bushes. And now bushes are very useful because if you don't have time for trees, you can always just add bushes and they will easily have the same type of effect. However, I did have time for trees in this build after even adding these bushes. I just didn't realize in the first place. So I quickly got some wood out, and to build trees, you pretty much just have to spam in the entire pillar of blocks. And now the reason trees are so useful in a lot of our builds is because they're like an add-on. You already have the terrain, you already have the structure. What else can you really add? It would be trees, and the reason trees would be so useful for this is because they take up a ton of space if you have any empty space in your area, and you can make them as colorful as you want, especially if your build isn't already very colorful. So after spamming branches in some random directions, I did get the tree up, and I actually had just about enough time for a second tree to be just about finished. So here is a better look at the build. Of course, I'm pretty happy with this. Hopefully the people were pretty happy with it as well. It did not get a legendary. However, with 106 points, I did in fact take the win for a garden. Not bad at all. I feel like this is a pretty good build for a garden, especially seeing the fact that it did incorporate a structure. And of course, I believe that you guys could definitely learn this idea. So the next theme was farm, and with farm I was going to take a completely different approach with the same style of a terrain and having a structure on top of it. So of course when we were working with terrain, you have the copy pasting thingy, you guys know this, but with a gradient, as I said, the terrain is supposed to complement the build. And now having a farm on a cliff makes absolutely no sense. So instead, I have a little stream running in with a lot of brown gradients, and these brown gradients represent like dirt or manure that the farm might have produced in the past couple of years. And well, I think this really well complements the build because the build is relatively colorful with all of its red and barnyard style of structures. As you can see as well, it's not only the colors that are changing, I'm also changing the amount of stuff that I'm placing down. As you can see on a cliff, there is a lot of ledges or a very steep angle that I'm working with. Meanwhile over here there's a very nice little slope where the water can really easily run down and somebody can clearly traverse on this land. And I feel like this is really important because without this your build might look just really rigid and not really working together with the colors and the shape. Because when you're doing something, of course everything has to work together. It can't just be doing it for the sake of doing it. And as always, I layered a little bit of grass on top of the build because grass is very cool, save the earth, climate change. And something I do really like to do is actually layer up the grass, and I go up a level with the grass, just have a little bit of a shape in the front, and this just helps it make it look not so flat or copy pasted. It's really useful when you're doing terrain, and once you really get the hang of terrain, you can practically do whatever you want, and this is again something that really helps complement your build. Now with the majority of this done, I just had to copy paste it across the entire thing, and then I could start the structure on top. So with the blocks that I need for the structure and with the complete terrain done, I began to do my building. I realized that quartz might not be the best block for the bottom of the structure, as I did want to give it a little bit more of a barnyard kind of feel and not just so futuristic, or not futuristic, but modern into today's age where everything is made out of white or plastic. So I did add a little bit of wood on the bottom, and I feel like this is really good framework. But when you're doing these structures, what you pretty much want to do is just fill up the entire wall of space. But you also don't want it to be really skinny and just leaning towards one end of the build. So what I usually do is start out really thick or having a very strong, large platform on the bottom. And as I move up, the build comes to lean closer and closer towards the wall. So you might know that on a lot of farms or a lot of barns, there's often a very big X on the entire wall. And well, to replicate this X, I just made an X out of quartz. And sometimes you just gotta follow these real life things and just go old-fashioned style, not just spam everything everywhere, and still make good builds out of that. So with this basic part set up, I began to fill the entirety of the rest of the build with red terracotta because, as you know, the entire farm is pretty red, so this was pretty characteristic to what I was going to be doing. I cleared an area out of the red block, and then I built a small roof overhanging on top of it. I decided to go with slabs on this roof because if I just went with normal blocks, it wouldn't be as detailed as I could go, and plus this is being copy pasted, so it didn't really matter if I was spending more time on a smaller area. So if you watch Korean, you might know how obsessed he is with roofs and how he does those. So I did my best to replicate sort of a Korean-esque type of roof where he layers it up slowly using slabs and a triangular frame. And as you can see, I'm using his strategies over here to, well, upgrade my roof. I place a couple blocks around and try to flatten out the roof in a way, however, in a sense, not trying to just turn everything into a big square. So I gave the roof a little bit more of an overhang because the overhang was looking a little bit short and extended it a little bit over. And I feel like this is pretty good. So once this roof was done, I proceeded to clear out a little bit more. Actually, no, I just proceeded to build a little bit more out of the roof of the rest of the build because, of course, if there's a roof on the bottom section, there has to be a roof on the top as well. So I set it to cyan terracotta, and then I cleared out a little bit of the cyan terracotta to give it a small slope because, as you know, having a block roof doesn't really make sense. And then once this roof was cleared out, I moved on and added a couple of windows to the bottom of the farm, or well, the top of the farm, I guess. And this window was simply done out of the dark oak fence. Also added a little bit of a trim around the walls before I did these windows because having a trim is always nice. You outline your build and it just highlights the things that you want the people to see. So with all this done, I actually had a lot of time left over, so I decided to add some trapdoors and buttons around to decorate the build a little bit more. I don't really see the need in adding way too much detail on this stage because this is, at the end of the day, still build battle, and having too much detail might just use all the time, but since I'm pretty experienced with this type of building, I did have a lot of time left over, so I was able to decorate this build more than I usually would have. So I added a couple more buttons along the top, but once this was completely done, I just began to copy paste the thing. So as shown in the previous build per se, you pretty much want to select the entire thing, copy it, and paste it one block in front of the rest of the build. And of course this might mess up the rest of the build a little bit, but that is the beauty of it. You just fix it by hand, and it gives this beautiful offsetting kind of, well, it is this beautiful offset kind of texture that honestly makes the build look so much more dynamic because it gives a lot more three-dimensional feel to it. And of course, leaving a 3-block gap in the middle, I proceeded to copy and paste the rest of the build into its setting. So with the barnyard done, there is obviously this massive gap in the middle, and of course this middle is just for a gate or a door of some kind. I feel like that's the best way to do it because then with this you just have a nice little angular central point for a meeting, and it's not too wide so you're not adding too much detail to it. It's fast to build and it's just genuinely a good idea. I added a tall roof in the middle, and then I soon carved down this roof a little bit to give it a little bit more shape because having a big block for a roof, as I said, isn't optimal. So I carved down the shape a little bit, looked really square. So yeah. And the last bit you want to do is just decorate the terrain a little bit more. So I added a gravel path in front of the farm because adding a gravel path just ties the entire build together a lot more because having a gravel path will complement the door and give the entire farm a central place to look at. And then after adding a couple hay bales, leaves, fences and just hoed the ground a little bit. After doing all this, the entire farm was pretty much complete. And the reason I use spruce fence instead of other things is because the spruce fence gives a really good texture for having bushes, and I feel like that's really useful for this particular build because, as I said, bushes are useful when you don't have time for trees. And with a minute left on the clock, I just use a hoe to hoe the ground down a lot more. If you do have time, you can add seeds again to this ground, and having seeds will probably give it a little bit more detail than you originally would have had. And on top of this, with all this empty grass, of course bone mealing it is a great idea. And you can also bone meal the seeds to grow them up a little bit, and spamming bone meal might be just as easy as spamming the leaves, and it gives just as much texture. But having them together honestly makes the best type of combination. And when I was done bone mealing everything, the entire build was pretty much complete. I had almost 30 seconds left, so as you can see, this isn't too hard of a tactic, but when you're doing this tactic, it actually helps your building a lot because you're able to do a lot of amazing structures quickly and smartly using this, well, cool tactic that not that many people know about yet. So here's a better look at my build, the farm in all of its glory with, well, having the train complement the build, and again also having the build complement the train and the entire thing tying together with working Pro Tools together in the best strategy possible. And well, pretty happy because in fact I did actually pull legendary. Yay, cool. Anyway, and with that, that is another win on the table. But more importantly than that, I hope you guys did learn something new. We pulled 92 points with the structure. I'm sure you guys can do a lot better with more cool and better developed structures in this. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash like and subscribe. And before I end off this video, there's going to be a pro lobby event on October the 13th at 4 p.m. EST. And if you guys can make it, that'd be tons of fun. I am going to be recording during this event, and on top of this, I hope you guys have an awesome day. I will be doing a singing voice reveal at 300 subscribers, so make sure you guys do smash like and subscribe to my channel. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!